receiving the federal grants through the city of Dubuque to acquire that land for, how much was it? $4,400 an acre, installed the streets and infrastructure, and economic development was off and running, except for one thing. Within 3 years of that, Dubuque was the greatest victim of then the worst recession since the Great Depression. But it struggled forward with that land and eventually filled it up with a number of folks who are there today. ABI McDonald, for example, your president, part of that company, the oldest manufacturer in the city of Dubuque, is located at the Dubuque Industrial Center, started by Dubuque Infrastructure, as was Matrix and Weber Paper and Right Height, formerly Frommel Industries, make dock doors and duct socks for ventilation. Precision Tools, small machine shop, CNC operator. Ainley Kennels, the finest manufacturer of aluminum dog kennels in the world. Kirchhoff Distributing, my favorite Budweiser distributor. U.S. Postal Service, Frito-Lay, Hodge Company, Nordstrom, Central Transport, Carlisle Communications, Owner Tool, and actually First Supply, formerly Tyson's. Well, their work was pretty much done. They had filled up that industrial park, and what's gone west of there is another story, which I'm glad to share with you at another time. But they decided then, after filling up this industrial park that you see here, that and creating 995 jobs, so they needed to go on to the next thing. And what might that be? Well, they decided on a new focus, and the new focus was other people were developing industrial land, i.e. the city. Purchased over 900 acres in 1998 for future development, which we are developing in stages and has created over 2,000 plus jobs in those areas. But Dubuque Initiatives now, not Infrastructure, they changed their name, decided to have a different focus, and that was downtown redevelopment. Taking the resources that they gleaned from the Dubuque Industrial Center and applying it to find properties that were neglected, but with a little love, could really turn around to downtown, and they did that. Cooper Wagon Works, if you came down 3rd Street, the Crust Restaurant, beautiful facility, 21 apartments, loft apartments above. Platinum Building, a building that was vacant for years. They purchased it and held on to it until they found the right developer. Platinum Insurance now owns the Platinum Building, and this is, ladies and gentlemen, world-class office space. The German Bank, a home to the Bank Restaurant on 3rd and Main, is also loft apartments above. The Port of Dubuque. Dubuque Initiatives was part of the mix, and how do we transform this what was an eyesore into this gem on the Mississippi River? They were part of the chain of ownership to make sure that they could acquire the property, transfer it to the public sector, or so that eventually it could be transferred then to the private sector and be successful. And of course, the historic Roshek Building, which is now home to a company called IBM. The Roshek Building was built, first half of it was built in 1929, before the crash. Interestingly, the other half of it was built in 1932, in the depth of the recession. It was a retail department store, Roshek Company, like Macy's, but they didn't survive. Eventually they moved from downtown Dubuque, went out to the mall, as most department stores did, and eventually left the mall. Now we have a Yonkers, but Roshek Building basically didn't have much love. It was under-occupied. We had a few tenants there, but when we had the opportunity to entice IBM to come to Dubuque, that was going to be the home for them. So the Dubuque Initiative stepped in, and they bought the building in January of 2009 for $450,000, a 250,000 square foot, 9-story building, $450,000. They relocated the tenants that were in that building to other locations in the building or around the community. Invested $45 million in that to have it be the finest global services technology center in the world for IBM. That's not our definition, it's theirs. It utilized historic and new market tax credits and built an expertise within this community as to how do those programs work and how can we apply them to other projects which will serve us for years to come. It, as the mayor said, in sustainability, as a mission of our community, it is a gold eligible LEED building, which is very rare for a deconstruct reconstruct project of a building of that size. And 60,000 square feet are available for lease for anyone that's looking for an expansion. By the way, I've been remiss by not inviting every one of you as employers to come to Dubuque. Not just to visit, but to stay. We're not talking about wooing you away from the community we're in, but when you have that opportunity for expansion, if you long for a place where the public sector and the private sector work together, if you want to be successful and profitable, as I know you do, then please consider Dubuque for your next expansion. Talk about partners, and this is probably too small for you to see, but I'll tell you that the IBM project was made possible because of everybody on that page. For example, within 24 hours notice, we invited every financial institution in this community to join us for a meeting about an opportunity for a nameless company that could bring as many as 1,300 jobs to our community. So every bank and credit union was invited, and the president of every bank and credit union arrived. And we told them, we need a $24 million line of credit to begin this project in order to rehab this building for this company we can't tell you about. And there was quiet in the room. Those of you that know bankers, you talk about a $25 million line of credit without a lot of details, there should be quiet in the room. And the city stood up and said, and we'll guarantee the loan. From that instant forth, the IBM project was real. The building was acquired. It had to be remodeled for the first 2 floors by June of 2009, and it was done. IBM said you can't do it. It was done 2 weeks before the delivery date. So the banks and the credit unions were involved. Our public officials were involved. We had 3 dinners hosted by the presidents of the higher education in our community, the community colleges, Clark, Loras, University of Dubuque, University of Wisconsin-Platteville. The presidents had never been in a room together themselves, but for 3 separate dinners, they hosted IBM teams and welcomed them to this community, being able to show them the quality of higher education that in fact existed here. So partnerships is the name of the game. And what did it do? It transformed the Roshek building, which looked like a set. How many of you have seen the TV show Mad Men? Circa 1960s. That's what the Roshek building looked like, but it's been restored to its majesty in the early 30s. And it is a showplace for our community. That's what Bill's going to talk to you about. My name is Rick Dickinson, and I serve as the director of Greater Dubuque Development Corporation. In fact, I started 16 years ago in June 1st of 1995. Within 1 month of my coming on board at Greater Dubuque Development, 3 things happened. A foundry in East Dubuque burned to the ground, 78 jobs never to return again. The PAC announced that they were going to lay off 2,000 people, close up. And the Silver Eagle, which was a riverboat over in East Dubuque, decided to go down the river, and the license wound up someplace over around Chicago. Mike Van Mulligan thought I was the angel of death of economic development. But the interesting thing out of that crisis, and how we then rallied around how to dig out of that hole, developed a team that I'm proud to say exists to this day, 16 years later. And what does that team do? Well, in Dubuque, at Greater Dubuque Development, we do basically 3 things. Number 1, business retention and expansion. We just don't flap our lips about it. We are dedicated to it. And we've tried to find tools that make that doable. For example, as Mike mentioned to you, we sit down with businesses. We don't guess what's going on in your world. We don't think we know you because we have a golf match at a charitable organization event. No, we sit down with you and we ask hard questions and you give us hard answers. And we enter that information into a database. 250 interviews every year, 2 dedicated staff to doing that over a 12-month period. So we have more than a snapshot. We have over a year's time what's really going on in our community, and that's our Bible. And we sit down with Mike Van Mulligan and his staff every Wednesday at 11 o'clock, no fail, to talk about what did we find in the last week, what needs to be done, did we do what we said we were going to do, Greater Dubuque Development and City of Dubuque, and what needs to be doing, what needs to be happening the next week. Business retention and expansion, dedicated staff, sitting down with business, and most importantly, acting on the information you give us. You give us the information, we act. That's the name, info, action. Number 2, national marketing. What we decided to do in regard to national marketing is to hire talent. And we've hired two of the best people in the country when it comes to national marketing. Mike Lewin, former United States Congressman, former head of the two largest chambers of commerce in the state of Iowa, Cedar Rapids Priority 1, Des Moines Partnership. We hired him as the president in charge of national marketing for Greater Dubuque Development while he was the director of the Iowa Department of Economic Development. And you saw IBM and Hormel and others are testimony to the wisdom of that move by our board of directors. And now Mike is phasing out, and what have we done? Decided to do the same thing, hire talent. We just announced on June 1st, Mark Seckman, former president of Priority 1, there for 18 years, the president for 10 years, responsible for over 50 new companies coming to Cedar Rapids in that 10-year period of his tenure, is now coming to a community which I think is going to give him the legs to really be successful, even more so than he was in the past. And why is that? Well, when he sat down last Wednesday with Mike and his staff, after the meeting I asked Mark, how many times did you get together with community decision makers like that in your previous job? Never. Never. In 18 years. And he had an opportunity to sit down with the public sector and a key decision maker in a scheduled meeting that wasn't crisis related. Or it wasn't, okay, we have an opportunity today, I haven't talked to you for 6 months, but what do you say we do a deal? No, he'd never seen that, but he's seen it now. And I'll tell you folks, it works. Business retention and expansion, national marketing. What's third? Workforce. Workforce retention, workforce recruitment, and workforce development. We have a program in Dubuque called Dubuque Works, where our office has a very talented woman. Her name is Sarah Harris, Vice President of Workforce Operations for us. She heads up an umbrella organization called Dubuque Works, working with the Chamber of Commerce, the Community College, the Iowa Department of Workforce Development, Dubuque Labor Management, the Foundation of Greater Dubuque, working on a variety of different programs. Anything that touches on workforce retention, development, and recruitment, we coordinate and we work with each other, and we're self-critical, and we try to help, and we raise money to do things that maybe you don't do in other communities, and it works. We have a program called AccessDubuqueJobs.com. It is a product of the Telegraph Herald, Woodward Communications here in Dubuque. We raise $190,000+ on that every year by employers paying to play. That's a gift, really, an investment by TH to Greater Dubuque Development. And then we use that money to staff talent like Sarah Harris, and then promote the site to college graduates within a 100-mile radius of Dubuque. And Mike just told you how many college students there are. 304,000 college students. And we connect them to AccessDubuqueJobs.com. We average 120,000 individual visitor sessions per month on that site. 2-to-1 over Monster.com. And when IBM came to Dubuque, and what question do they have in their mind? How are we going to hire 1,300 people in a community of 60,000 that have an IT background? We were able to go to AccessDubuqueJobs.com database, do a keyword search about IT expertise, and in front of the HR director plopped 600 resumes. Not, yeah, we can get folks, we can hire people, we have talented people here. Oh, we did a labor shed analysis, and it tells us there's this many people looking for work. No, we gave them names and addresses of 600 people. We said, imagine how big the stack would be if we used the greatest brand in the world, IBM, and say there's an opportunity in Dubuque. And you know, within 2 weeks of their announcement, there were 10,000 applications for 1,300 jobs. Mike told you some things that he thought were key to the community's success. And I'm going to share with you what I think those keys are, and then we'll answer any questions you might have. In the 1980s, Dubuque was embarrassed. City council meetings were the equivalent or a precursor to the Jerry Springer Show. They were a political food fight where people enjoyed making fun of each other, picking on each other, making light of the circumstance, agreeing to disagree. And as a result, we were the greatest victim of, at that time, the worst recession since the Great Depression. So how do you go fast forward to 2008 and 9 and 10 and 11 and be one of the survivors, growing strong?